Hey yo, I am the star in any room that I stand in. I am the standout, you just my stand-in. These bitches copy my homework, that's what they hand in. That's why I'm private like the airports I land in. Life is a beach house, don't let the sand in. I ball in any arena, go let the fans in.
What's up, y'all? I hope all is well. I feel like it's been forever since I went live because it has. So I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like a newbie at this, but I haven't done it in a while. So I don't know. I'm like a little nervous, but okay, let's get started. I think everything is good to go. I can be heard on YouTube. I'm assuming. Actually, let me just make sure before I get started, and then it always takes me a long time too. Okay, yeah, sounds good. Okay, cool. All right, so this live I will be reading from an article, and we're gonna have a discussion around, the article, obviously. And so I've been wanting to read or do some type of video about this for a while. I mean, it's kind of like not an old situation, but it happened like 5 years ago or so, but it's still relevant. And it makes up every single thing that I like to do on my channel, kind of like comparing and analyzing the differences and similarities to, the racial experiences of people of African descent in these different countries, primarily people who are of mixed ancestry or of lighter skin complexion, whether it be discussing skin tone politics or just the politics and the social experience of being mixed. So this is right up my alley. It's kind of what I did my research on in school as well. I actually wrote a paper that was kind of comparing why people in the mixed people in the United States versus Brazil, why they identify the way that they do. So this is right up my alley. So I was really excited about reading this article. I just hadn't got around to it in a long time. I mean, going live, it's easy, but it takes energy as well. Mental energy, making sure everything's good. So, but I want to be more like consistent with it because it's really easy to put out content that way, aside from having to edit and everything like that. But anyways, so let's get into the article. Let me shoot. I should have added my little thumbnail, but yeah. So this article was written by Marques Travae, and he has a blog called Black Brazil Today. So I believe it first started off as a website, and then he eventually started making YouTube videos as well. I really love his channel. He analyzes race in Brazil, obviously, like the Black experience in Brazil. He is a Black American man, and he's been traveling to Brazil since like the early 2000s. So I really enjoy his channel. I've read some of his articles as well. So I would really encourage y'all to check out his platform too if you're into this type of stuff. I'm actually going to be going to Brazil very soon. So I'm really excited about that as well. So I'm like, let me get into like the Brazil mindset. You know what I mean? So I'm really intent on pronouncing his name correctly. So yeah. But yeah, check out his platform. I will have it linked in the description box below. And I actually have covered other topics that he talked about when he was talking about Brazilians dragging Isa for allegedly having a so-called white baby. Of course, the child has since, gained their color and stuff, but people are making assumptions and things. So check out that video as well. I would encourage you to check out Marcus's video as well as my video. It was really interesting, if I do say so myself. But yeah, so support the Black Brazil Today blog. But yeah, so he's who wrote the article that I'll be reading from today and giving like my take and everything. So let me just pull it up right here. Hold on, I think it's this one. Oh, okay, there it goes. All right, cool. Yeah, y'all see his collage, really beautiful. Okay. But yeah, so let's get into it. So the blog is titled Mixed Race of African Ancestry, Danrley, Danrley, I think that's how you pronounce it, Ferreira, and Meghan Markle. And so this article was published on January 17th, 2020. So it is a little, I mean, in terms of modern technology type of media, this is old, but it's really not. It's still relevant. It's going to be relevant 10 years too. You know what I mean? These types of dynamics have been going on. But yeah, so if it seems a little dated, or like, why are we talking about Meghan Markle? Why is it, referencing stuff from like almost 10 years ago at this point? That is why. So anyway, so yes, let's get into it. So the caption is mixed race of African ancestry, Danrley Ferreira and Meghan Markle. When whiteness wants to remind persons of mixed race of their African ancestry. The case, yeah, okay. The case of Danrley Ferreira in Brazil and Meghan Markle in Britain by Marques Travae. The recent headlines detailing the desire of Meghan Markle and Prince Harry to step back from their role in the royal family had many wondering what could be behind such decisions. Not being inside on the situation, I won't suggest that this all has to do with race, but clearly race does play a role. Black Britons see it that way also. This whole controversy surrounding Meghan became a part of one of the most celebrated families in modern times, was the reason that I wrote an extended post on the topic in May of last year with the birth of Meghan and Harry's child, Archie. Meghan's racial identity and classification was specifically the topic of a previous piece in December of 2017. In context of the recent controversy, I thought it would be intriguing to analyze Meghan's situation and compare it with the recent news story coming out of Brazil, albeit of lesser public knowledge. I'm gonna have to I'm sorry, this tiny little font is hard for me to read from. I'm sorry. Okay. Let me make it a little bigger. Yeah. Okay, cool. That story has to do with Danrley Ferreira, a participant on Brazil's global TV network long-running reality show Big Brother Brazil, BBB, which is due to start its 20th season next week. In recent news, Ferreira shares a series of critical comments he has received via one of his social networks. The subject of criticism was Ferreira's hair. Via direct message, that's him. Y'all can see. It says, via direct message, the person sent the following in a series of messages. Go cut this hair. Your hair is hard. Cut your hair. It's ugly. And go get your hair cut. It's better. Cabelo duro, meaning hard hair, is a common insult directed at Afro-Brazilians. The critic needled Ferreira's repeatedly. Oh yeah, wait, sorry. The critic needled Fury repeatedly with comments after comment until after Darrelly finally got fed up with the criticism. He responded via his Twitter account and lashed out at the critic. What's your problem with my hair? Fuck this shit every time. Realizing that many of his followers could have read his outburst, Ferreira later apologized and ended up revealing why such harassment finally got to him. I'm thinking, should I get my commentary here or keep reading? I think I'm gonna keep reading, then I'll get my commentary. Okay. Guys, I'm sorry for the aggression, but at some moment we get tired of holding it in quietly. Man, this hurts, he continued. It took me 20 years to accept myself and to start letting my hair grow out because of people like that. If you're the kind of person, go to hell. Many of his followers offered words of support to the biology student. I loved your response. You're perfect. Understand, said one. You look great with your big hair, and when it gets blacker, you will be super stylish. Don't let these comments affect you ever again, commented another supporter. Block him, sweetheart. Nobody deserves to read this kind of stuff. Save yourself from going through it, said another. For clarity, let me point out that when Black Brazilians speak of Afro hairstyles, they usually refer to it as a Black power, as a style that is associated with 1970s Black American activists. The term is often simply shortened to the term black. So when one of Fear's supporters wrote that when it gets blacker, you will be super stylish, and it's translated in Portuguese, he or she was actually saying that when his afro grows longer, not darker, it will be more stylish. So yeah, people are really supportive. So that's really nice. Let me think. Mm, yeah, let me read the whole hair thing first, and then I'll give my criticism. Okay. Um, Both the criticism and the reaction once again expose the centuries-long target of social rejection in Brazil, cabelo crespo, meaning kinky curly hair. It's no secret, as the numerous articles on this blog dealing with this topic will assist. Beauty in Brazil has long been associated with having hair that is as straight as possible. For this reason, Black and non-Black women alike have long adapted ways to straighten the weaves, curls, kinks, and naps out of their hair. Some techniques, including powerful but dangerous chemicals or some sort of heat inducing device to force the tighter curls to loosen into submission. The internet is full of stories of Black Brazilian women who have suffered from the falling out of their hair after having used some intended having used something intended to straighten it. For many men, the solution is pretty simple. Either you shave the hair off extremely close to the scalp or completely avoid being labeled with the social stigma of having cabelo rumi, meaning bad hair. Okay, so this is something I did want to comment on. So I find it very interesting that basically everywhere in the diaspora there seems to be terms that describe negative language around kinky curly hair, afro hair, no matter the texture. And it's always in the same variation. I find that very interesting because, like in English in the States, we have the term um, good hair. But like in Spanish, you have like pelo malo, like bad hair. You know what I mean? I haven't heard people say good hair as much, but I've heard people tell people that they have bad hair. So, or like, so it means the same thing. So I find that very interesting. You know what I mean? Like that there's words for e- just having negative language around afro hair. I find that very interesting. So that was the first thing. It's like even in Brazil they have the same like type of associations and stuff. And he even talked about on his blog some of like the comments that's made. It's the same thing everywhere. So I found that very interesting. And then especially with all this that's coming out about like the harmfulness of like perms and everything. Yeah, it's really it's a deeper conversation than just like, oh, you just gotta love your hair, you just gotta love yourself. Like, nah, this stuff is like actually causing cancer. It's really like actually life or death. You know what I mean? I'm only saying this because I know a lot of people have been talking about Brazilian hair products too, and some are better than others. But some of these products, and even I know like some other products from the Caribbean too, some of them they're supposed to loosen up your curls, make it like more conditioned, easier to use, but the chemicals that they use um they're just not good. And then with the whole men cutting their hair really short thing, I had really never thought about how that could be like maybe a response to internalized texturism on the part of Black men. I never really thought about that. I did used to think about the whole waves thing and did always find that interesting. But I just looked at it as a style. I wasn't trying to put any like social justice connotations on it, but I did always find that interesting also. So I wonder if that's a thing in Brazil, but I feel like that's part of it also. It's like just to keep like the hair like neat. And then that's a part of it also. Like, why do you feel like, oh, having it straight or slick back, why do you feel like that's more neat? Why can't having a puff or something be neat? You can have dreads that are very, well kept, very professional. You know what I mean? Like, so it's interesting because it's like the class association that it has in all of these countries. That's kind of what it is too. They feel like, oh, that's kind of that's not a that's like a hairstyle to wear in the house, or that's a hairstyle a child wears, especially in the older generations. I've noticed this in Latin America and in North America too, that a lot of older people, if you don't have your hair straightened, they don't consider it professional. It's not necessarily that it's bad, but they're saying like, oh, you're going to work, so you have to have your hair cut. Can't have braids as a man. You can't have braids because XYZ. I also do think there's a part of I don't know. There is I can imagine as a man of African descent in the workforce also having dreads or braids or stuff like that. I could also see how racially that could come up and be like a thing also. So that is an interesting conversation because I had actually like never even thought about the whole like cutting hair short thing. But that does make a lot of sense. And if you talk to a lot of like immigrant people here in the United States, like no matter if they're from like the Caribbean, Latin America, wherever, even Africa, especially in Africa, a lot of older people, they don't want their sons having braids, dreadlocks, anything like that. I know so many people, even in my family, who's oh yeah, yeah, definitely in my family. I'll get to that later. But many people personally that they moms had such an issue with them having dreadlocks, having long hair, anything. So it's interesting. And these are not like people in their 60s. These are like 40s, not too old. So it is a very interesting conversation. And I mean, like that's kind of I'm not gonna say it's an old topic, but people have been talking about it for a very long time. But I honestly think actually in Latin America, it's honestly worse. Like I think that in the United States, people are like they're like almost 25 years ahead of people in the terms like a Latin of terms of the natural hair movement. You know what I mean? Like where people were in 2008 in the United States when it comes to when it comes to natural hair in Latin America, they're still like 2007, 2006, early YouTube, just getting into like, okay, normalizing wearing braids, curls. I have so many friends as parents give them a hard time for wearing braids and their hair curly and things like that. This is in the last 2 years and stuff. I kind of more so dealt with that in the early 2000s. My family had changed their mindset after a certain time, but yeah, it is a difficult thing. And then, I guess I'll just give my commentary about what I was going to say about him lashing out like that is saying like, oh, after 20 years of harassment, like you see a Instagram comment and you get real triggered. Like, I could definitely relate. Like I could definitely get it. I haven't had anybody make comments about my hair in a very long time, but I have gotten triggered by I give a good example. I literally said I was triggered in the whole situation on TikTok when they were dragging that light skin girl for saying that she don't feel comfortable with her 4C hair. See, situations like that, those really trigger me because of stuff like that. So I think it's an interesting conversation because a lot of people would expect somebody with the hair texture that I have. I mean, you see it in my profile picture. You also see what hair type, this dude has. He's cute. I'm not even gonna lie, but yeah, he's giving like he's giving a red bone Harry Potter. Let me stop. But yeah, no, yeah, yeah, he's cute. But yeah, so people would look at our hair texture in the United States, and he's gonna get to this, and have certain they would have certain preconceived notions about what our experience or our feelings about our hair would be. You know what I mean? So they wouldn't know the experiences that we've actually had with our hair in this modern time with natural hair, how people feel about it and stuff. So they'd be surprised. So when you lash out like that, I'm at least speaking from a United States context. So when somebody lashes out like that or gets triggered, like I did with the whole, light skin girl being dragged situation, people are surprised like that and they feel like, we're just crying light skin tears or whatever. But it's like, no, you don't know the backstory. You don't know, you don't know the lore from 2005. Okay. So that's all it is. So I could totally get where he was coming from. Because I'm sure like I made a few videos, I'm pretty sure about like that one topic. So I'm sure there are people who could probably be like, oh, like, why are you still worried about something that happened to you when you were a kid? Why are you still making 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 videos, about natural hair, whatever. And it's like, yeah, because it's triggering. Like you might be in a better place now. You might love who you are and your hair and stuff like that and be able to appreciate it now. But you know what I mean? And be healed, do your therapy, spiritual, whatever you got to do. But when it comes to stuff like that with race, I feel like low key, you kind of are always going to have that child in you that remembers how you felt, because I would mostly get it. Honestly, it wasn't even other kids coming at me because of my hair. It would be grown ass adults. So, I've done the work, but it's like, I forgive, but I don't forget, bitch. You know what I mean? Like, I ain't gonna pretend like it didn't happen. Like, like I'm good, but we ain't just gonna pretend like that never went on. Feel me? So I could totally get where he was coming from. But yeah, that's the best example I can give to that was people's reaction to that girl saying that how she felt about her hair and how people were like very dismissive of her and saying that she was crying light skin tears because her skin's color had nothing to do with the hair type thing. And this is why I really want to cover this article, because it's a great glimpse of that in when it comes to like other cultures, and how like it depends on what cultural context and perspective you're speaking from. In the United States, we have a certain perspective of blackness and black hair and things like that. And in Brazil, it's a little different. Or, if you're in Cuba or DR or wherever, it might be different. So, you might be in your culture feeling like your hair is super kinky and your hair is really hard. And then you might go to another culture and they're over here saying that you have good hair. And so it's like you're dealing with texturism kind of on both sides. That's literally my experience. I'm just gonna be honest with you. Like, I just had to be real. It was mostly like other like it was mostly, yeah, Hispanic people and other mixed and light skinned people in my family that would, me making a lot of texturous comments towards me, mostly because that was who I was raised by. It's not that other, skin tones and ethnicities of black people weren't, but that's who I was around. So when I would go around my friends, when I got to be middle school, high school, and girls would be like, "Oh my God, I want to do your hair. Your hair is so pretty," and this and that. And I was like, "What? Like that's not how I felt about it." So it's like it's different perspectives. So, even with the, girl on TikTok, she has 4C hair. So people are looking at her being dismissive of her experience, saying, "Oh, like you're light skinned, so why are you complaining about the beauty standard, whatever." But it's like, you're not in her shoes or her perspective of, having her hair type. You can't just say that, oh, just because somebody has a certain skin tone and looks a certain type of way, that, everything is going to be peaches and unicorns for them, and they, never had a different type of struggle. It's not the exact same. It's just different. Same thing with a dark skin girl that has, straight or slick hair. I have them in my family and stuff like that. Like, people could think like, "Oh my gosh, you have really, quote unquote good hair. You have really nice hair. Oh, you're pretty, whatever." But colorism is still something that you had to experience, or you might have still internalized just the messages of the world. Light skinned women can relate to that also in different ways. So that's kind of what I was always trying to also talk about on my channel as well, like kind of the intersectionality of the isms, and these cut and dry light skin versus dark skin discussions. Oh, this versus that, diaspora wars. Oh, loose hair girlies versus kinky girlies. Like, it's very toxic. Why aren't I showing his picture? Hold on, what's going on? But yeah, um, y'all looking at letters and words. Let's look at the John. No, stop. Um, yeah, like I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, like people would just have their own experiences with stuff, and I just wanted people to be able to see, that there's multiple different ways to experience those things in your life, and that we can kind of relate, and trying to find kind of middle grounds and ways to have a common understanding and a common respect, because different, you can relate to different women of African descent, or even women of color, just women in general's experience. It may not be the same, but I find that personally comforting. Like, I'm not a white girl, but I can listen to some things that white girls might have experienced with guys, or just feeling internal feelings of self-love, and just being a woman. It's like, oh, I can relate, and hearing that made me feel better, instead of it always being this competition thing. Because at the end of the day, whenever you hear narratives surrounding that, it's always a competition thing to feel desirable to men. It's never about internal love, or like, oh, I'm really working towards how can I actually love my hair and who I am, what's growing out of my scalp, so I'm not using these dangerous chemicals and frying the fuck out of my hair, you know what I mean? And not feeling that insecure every time it's about to rain. How can I work on that? Not how can I feel better so I could be on some light skin versus dark skin, or whatever it is. You know what I mean? Or feel like, oh, this, I feel like I can compete, or not feel like this girl thinks she look better than me, or whatever desirability it is. That's whatever. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent, but that's kind of just what I wanted to say with this article as well, because we know that people would look at Meghan Markle as well as this guy and stereotype their experience in the world and how they've been treated, especially from a United States perspective. So I think it's important to know, and to discuss like how people who come from mixed cultures are experiencing these things as well, and how just being from a culture that's more accepting of mixedness and multiracial families, that doesn't necessarily aid in all of these issues, and that doesn't mean that you're not going to have certain issues or can't relate to certain things. That's all I've wanted to say. But anyways, let's move on to the next part of this. So yeah, so he goes on to say, yeah, let me start from the last paragraph I left off on. Some techniques, including powerful but dangerous chemicals, or some sort of heat-inducing device to force the tightener or loosen curls into submission. Do I want to make this comment I'm about to make? I literally had a family member, light skinned black woman with type 4 hair. One of my aunts, yeah. She literally said when I was a kid, because my family, we were all living together at one point, she gonna say, oh, we need to tame their hair. So basically that means that's when your family like straightens it consistently. And I'm just gonna, I'm gonna spill the tea. This is something a lot of mixed and light skin cultures do. Where you're just straightening your hair consistently to the point where it's like basically you don't have a perm, but it's so straight to where it can't go back. So when they talk about like Dominican salons, a lot of times they're not getting a perm in their head, but they're getting their hair straightened so much that it just never goes back. So that's basically what she wanted to do. Thank God my mother was like, nah, with that shit. Like my mom has always been very progressive, but yeah, my aunt was over here talking about taming hair. So when he said to like put the curls into submission, it just made me think about that. And I just remember that so vividly. She was like, oh, well, if y'all gonna be here, you need to tame that hair. Like, what? Like, girl, what's on your biscuit? But yeah, that's just a crazy story. But yeah, that's a very common thing that people don't talk about. So a lot of people may not even know their hair texture because their family has been straightening it for so long, but that doesn't mean that their hair is chemically processed. So you can do stuff to reverse the heat damage, which that's basically what it is. It's like basically permanent heat damage to an extent. I'm just gonna be honest with you, because that's not, if how your hair naturally comes out. It's not to be mean, but that's what happened. So basically she wanted my curls to be heated out to a point where it's not as puffy and big like it is now. So I'm really glad that my mom didn't let them do that. But yeah, that made me think of that memory. Memory card unlocked for real, because yeah. But yeah, a lot of that's pretty common to do. So a lot of people tell you, oh, I don't have a perm. It's like, yeah, you don't have a perm, but you've been like getting your hair straightened every 2 weeks since 2007. So it's like kind of a similar thing. And that's not good for your hair, your scalp either. Like I really am I'm not worried, but I do want them to do some research on how even these hair salons and like being under the dryer so much and like that extreme heat on your head consistently, starting out from when you're a little girl, how does that affect your hair and your scalp? You know what I mean? I don't blame I don't blame the moms and the aunts and things like that, because they didn't know better at that time and they are doing it out of love, what they think is love, what they think they should be doing most of the time, even if it's like ignorance as well. But at the same time, it's just like it's just a little bit too much, you know what I mean? So it's a real uncomfortable conversation, but it is a real thing to be discussing. But yeah, anyway, so yeah. So the internet is full of stories of Black Brazilian women who have suffered from the falling out of their hair after having used something intended to straighten it. For many men, the solution was pretty simple: either shave the hair extremely close to the scalp or completely to avoid being labeled with the social stigma of having cabelo ruim, meaning bad hair. It's only been in recent years, perhaps 2 decades, but especially in the past decade, that Black Brazilian men and women have been able to develop a pride and appreciation of their natural hair. The trend is quite noticeable in the streets of several cities across the country, as well as numerous hair parades, contests, and seminars promoted to stimulate pride in having kinks, curls, and waves. Fereira's response to the internet hacker is a perfect example of the journey within the development of Black identity that perhaps hundreds of thousands of Brazilians of Brazilian of thousands of, sorry, my family's outside my door distracting me. Fiere's response to his internet hacker is a perfect example of the journey within development of Black identity that perhaps hundreds of thousands of Brazilians of visible African ancestry have traveled. As Danrley himself confirmed, it took him 20 years to finally be able to accept the texture of his hair. And even with his new pride, he still has to endure rude, racist comments directed at him. Yeah, and that's one thing I will say that seems to be a difference between like what's going on now in the United States and in Latin America when it comes to natural hair. Like I was saying, they're like uh, at least like 15 years behind us, I would say, because like I do notice a very noticeable difference in attitude in the United States towards natural hair, and not just like a certain quote unquote type of natural hair, but just natural hair in general, as where, just from what I've observed and what I've heard that people are dealing with, and, even some place I travel to talking to my friends, they're still experiencing stuff that I was dealing with in like 2007 and shit. And I'm like, people are saying that to you. You have other adults are saying that to you. I would have punched that person in they lip. Like nobody in 2025 would said that to me. Granted, this was 2020, but that was only 5 years ago. I'm not gonna say nobody would ever come and no one would ever troll you, especially not a white person. I'm not saying this would never happen in the United States, but as somebody who's experienced both the negative opinions of natural hair as well as the post natural hair revolution, I there's definitely a noticeable difference and a noticeable attitude difference in attitude in the United States towards natural hair that I don't think is translating so much in the Caribbean and Latin America to the same extent. Slowly, but very, 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 very slowly. Like I said, I mean, I still have friends who are fighting with their family about them wearing goddess braids. Like, girl. But anyway, like, girl, you better never take them braids out if you got to do all that energy just to have you spending $200 to have to fight like cats and dogs with your mama to wear braids back to the DR. Like, girl, like, I mean, I commend you for thugging it out though. Like, I commend you. You do what you got to do, and that is how people learn. Because honestly, my mom has to deal with the same thing from her family too. And my mom's African American, so that's absolutely true. Like, that's what just depending on the attitude of wherever you are, your family. It takes a lot to have the courage to be that person and be like, no, I'm gonna wear my hair how I want to. I'm gonna do XYZ. I'm not gonna let y'all shame me into anti-black self-hating submission where you are. Because who want to spend 40-50 dollars for 3 hours under a hairdresser all day, like all Saturday morning or whenever? Like, who got time for that? That's no type of life. Me personally, like, I'll commit 8 hours to some braids or maybe 4 hours to a wash and go every 3 weeks or so, and I'm good. You know what I mean? Like, ain't nobody got time for all that. Washing your hair, then doing the wash and go and everything. So it's not like you're just, and it's like, I guess it's the same amount of time in the salon, but still, like, at least 2 hours being in the salon, at least for 2 hours, you're under straight heat. That's really hard in your hair. It's very different if you're spending 2 hours detangling, moisturizing, and putting cream and stuff in your hair. It's different. So anyway, um what was my point? Oh yeah, so the criticism that actually, let me how long I've been streaming, like 30 minutes. Yeah, let me see if it's gonna let me see the comments, because I've been having issues with that. Let me see. Okay, I can't see it from StreamYard. Let me see if I can see it from here. Oh yeah, I can see y'all's comments. Okay, great. Hey Irby, exactly 100. My mother been stopped using perm. Yeah, yeah. I really hope that there's some type of class action lawsuits against perms, just for you, black and lovely, all that. Like, I can't believe I used to see those boxes and be like, dang, I want to look like those girls. Come to find out, a lot of them didn't even have the perms because they mamas knew better. That's the crazy part. Like, but yeah, Ishtar, Queen of Lightskins. I'm screaming. No, I'm not. I don't have to be the queen. This is a democracy. Don't worry, y'all. America. Don't worry. This is not a monarchy or matriarchy, or what's the word for one person? I don't know. Y'all funny. Oh, it starts tight. I mean, it depends on how he acts. You know what I mean? It depends. Because you can have your physical types, but then certain people, and when you try to be in serious relationships, they be, wanting to play games and thinking about to blackmail, worship and shit. So it's, it depends. I'm from the UK. Ask me anything. Hi, AAA and Scream. I'm from the UK. Ask me anything. I'm trying to think. When we get to the UK part in like 10 minutes, you're going to be my person, okay? I definitely want you to share and give your perspective on like what he's saying. So I appreciate you for being here. Oh, dang, what time is it over there? Yeah, thanks for being up with us, because I'm sure it's like, what, like early in the morning? I don't know. What's you guys' time difference from us? I'm not good with that stuff at all. Like, I've even been like to Africa and stuff, and even then I could never get the time difference. So I'm not the person to ask about that. Um, but yeah, thanks y'all for being here. Let me get some water too. I'm taking a break. 1 second. Okay. Um Oh, okay, yeah. Yep, we're coming up on the Meghan Markle part right now. Yeah. Okay, great. So the criticism that Ferreira recently experienced online as well as through his life speaks to another issue, which makes for an intriguing analyst in the context of Meghan Markle's situation, which with Meghan's light skin, one has to imagine that in 1950s America, she might as well have been a candidate for moving to a small town where she had no family and attempting to pass as white. After the US was known for the strict one drop rule, a concept Brazil has always maintained didn't exist here. I'm not even gonna comment on that part because that's a whole live on its own. It's gonna take me off in another 45-minute tangent that none of us want to sit through. So I'm not even gonna comment on that. There's a movie I want to review though. It's called Passing. It's on Netflix. Some of y'all have probably seen it before. Me and my mom watched it together, and I want to read the book too because it's based on a book. It's based on a book, and I think somebody's real life as well. So let me know if y'all will want to maybe like do a review of that or something. I probably couldn't play it on YouTube, but maybe I could just like watch it and review it or something. But yeah, so the fact that Brazilians have used so many color-coded terminologies to define themselves in terms of race and color would seem to prove that stagnant concepts of race in the country didn't exist. I don't necessarily agree with this idea 100%. What I see is that in Brazil, it doesn't matter what terminology you use to define yourself. If too much of your African ancestry is visible in your physical appearance, many people may not define you as black or negro, but their subtle comments and behaviors will assure you that that you are not accepted as white. Brazil may pretend that it does not treat people with less slight African features as black, but it's not quite that simple. Yeah, I like that take because I definitely agree with that, and that's definitely been my experience, at least dealing with people from the Caribbean. Like, somebody who has my phenotype, yeah, I'm definitely not gonna be called like negro or something, negative or something like that. Like, I'm definitely not considered dark skinned. And I've definitely seen physically with my own eyes, people who are darker than me being treated differently than me. So I know for a fact it's a thing. But at the same time, I've also had so many experiences that are anti-black coded. So it's like that was something in my life that was a little not confusing, but it always made me like, like, I noticed that I would there's not a lot of uniform. I'm not gonna say it's not uniform treatment, but it's weird. I kind of sometimes don't know what to expect in certain situations. And I'm sometimes having to read stuff like, wait a minute, was this just like, okay, did they just not hear me? Was this like a racial thing? Were they like were ignoring me? Did they, you know what I mean? Like sometimes things are a little, I'd be questioning myself or not knowing how to perceive stuff sometimes. So at least I can speak for like that's my experience of being like kind of in both cultures in terms of like more of like a Hispanic descendant one and then a American one. As we're in America, you kind of, I'm not gonna say it's more cut and dry and clear, but kind of is like, you know what I mean? It's more so it's not really a lot of question there because you know what's up. And that's kind of what I'm gonna be honest with you, that's kind of what I kind of like about American systems more. I feel like they're more direct and you know what to expect. You know what I mean? As where in Latin America, I feel like there's a lot of how do I say it? It's more underhanded, so it's easier to kind of gaslight about it or to try to say, "Oh no, you're overreacting," or it wasn't that serious, or it's very slight at the same time. I will say that in certain parts of America, people are more direct with the racial like hostility, as where in a lot of Latin cultures, it can be more passive or sometimes even in the form of jokes or even in the form of sounding endearing. So it's a quote unquote endearing term or the person is joking with you. There's somebody you're comfortable with them, but the joke is not really appropriate. As we're in the United States, white people kind of know not to really joke like that. And there's also no real endearing terms that are black people see as endearing too that are racialized that white people could call them. Does that make sense? You know what I mean? Like this is kind of it's interesting, but it's like the racism, it's the same but different. That's what I always say. Cause Yeah, it's interesting. It's very much the same but different. Um, but also sometimes it is really flat out as well, and it's not even like it depends on where you are, it depends on the context. You know what I mean? I could say at least the only time where I say that it was very clear, direct racism, and it was like I knew what was up. I was in Argentina. I was we were at a street fair, and it was me. You know, I'm the only black Afro mixed person, whatever you want to call me. My two friends that are like Mexican, and then this other guy, Middle Eastern guy, white guy, and Asian guy, right? This dude offers them all samples. Mind you, the other people who are not Mexican, they don't clearly don't speak Spanish, right? So it's not like it was a communication boundary or anything. So we all come up as a group, right? He gives all of them samples, completely ices me out, like completely fucking ignores me. And I was just like, wow, that ass. Like, and I can honestly say, I think this was like my only experience of like actual like rural direct racism in that way. I've experienced like racism being called a hard art here in the United States, but it was more so stuff I found out later on, like, dang, that's how they was, and stuff like that. This was the first time it was like to my face. I was like, is this dude really serious right now? And I said in English, I'm like, hello, I make a gesture like clearly, hello, the hell, give me some. And he's still acting funny. I say in Spanish too. He's still acting like irritated, you know what I mean? So I kind of just stand there, and he, what is it, the word, like resentfully gave it to me, like, when somebody is like irritated that you won't just leave it, like that's how he gave it to me. I was just like, I was shocked. I was like, wow. You know what I mean? Like I thought that was really interesting. But the whole time that I was out there, of course people thought I was Brazilian because for obvious reason. But yeah, so I'm only bringing up that story, and that wasn't the only like weird race thing that happened, but that was just the most direct thing. But I'm only bringing that up because like, even, yeah, what he's saying is completely right. People may not look at you and call you straight up black or African because they're that they have an immigrant African population, so they have their own perception of things. But yeah, so they might not say that, but the funny shit that happens may still happen, because you think about it, there was only one white guy there, so it's not like, oh, I'm the only person, a bunch of white people. I was with a bunch of other people of color, and he still acted like that towards me. Granted, they do have an issue with Brazilians out there in Argentina as well. Do you think that is just because of football? Or do you think that it's also because Argentina is generally a white country and Brazil is generally an Afro mixed country? Yeah, you do the math. So there's a level of racism, but it's a level of xenophobia too. So that's kind of how I interpreted it. But he knew I wasn't Brazilian because I was speaking English. We were all speaking English, and then I asked him in Spanish. So he knew I can't even use a xenophobia excuse. This nigga was just racist. So yeah. Anyway, in the United States though, something like that wouldn't happen because his ass would be on TikTok faster, faster than you can say Argentina. That it would have went viral on TikTok, and they would have, came and blew up his spot. But in a country like Argentina, you can treat black people that way. So anyway, I forget why I got into that long drawn out story. Oh yeah, because I was saying how out there a lot of people thought I was Brazilian, but were still acting funny towards me. Yeah, so it's like, if white people in Latin America want to be racist towards you because they're anti-black or anti-indigenous, whatever, that's just what they're gonna be. Nobody cares if you're like mixed like that, to be honest. Like that's what I'm trying to say. Mix is a descriptive term. Like if people are racist, I feel like they're just gonna be racist. That doesn't mean that they see you as monoracial. They're just a prejudiced person. But anyway, that's just my take. um yeah, so then he says, what makes race a difficult nut to crack in Brazil is not only how people define others, but also how people define themselves. And the two don't always match up. For example, a person may see and identify themselves as pardo, or racially ambiguous moreno or mestizo, or I'm pretty sure that's how they say mestizo. So in my life, I've mostly been called moreno. So that's like brown. That can be African European. That can be African European and indigenous. That can be what we'll be called in some countries Indio, or African and indigenous. You know what I mean? Moreno is a very ambiguous term in itself, but it's genuinely described as somebody who is visibly a person of visibly non-white, but maybe ethnically, racially ambiguous to a degree. And it's not really specific based on a racial makeup, if that makes sense. It's also a term that's used more commonly in more countries. There are certain terms that are like only used in certain countries, like pardo is only used in Brazil. Granted, it's Portuguese, but yeah, that's why. As where like mulatto, moreno, those terms are more mestizo, clearly, because mestizo means mixed. Those terms are more ambiguous, used more commonly, used more broadly. So yeah, that's why I'm saying I've kind of experienced both. I've experienced colorist and racist situations, but I've also experienced um I've not experienced certain anti-blackness that was directed towards other people, and I have been in situations with people I feel like were probably colorists, and I was probably benefiting from colorism in that situation. So I can honestly say I've really been in both situations. That's why I like speaking on this stuff, because it's a lot of different ways to look at it. But yeah, so what I'm getting at here is that Danrley Fieri's appearance classifies him as black to me, but as Brazilians often claim that pardos and mestizos aren't black according to these criterias, Fiera would not be black. People may even refer to Danrley as racially ambiguous moreno. Where I see the contradiction here is that skin color, hair, and other physical characteristics play a key role in how a person is classified along the lines of race. Hair texture being perhaps the most important. Yes, I totally agree. I totally agree. Let me keep reading before I go off into my tangent. It is sometimes said that if a person is clearly sitting on the racial fence, it is the hair that will often define whether a person will be classified as white or non-white. This this take is such a revolutionary idea for me, because randomly within this week sometime I was like, wait a minute. The hair thing for mixed and light skinned people is such a big deal, actually. And this is like a hidden secret that everybody knows but nobody talks about. It's such a big deal because it can really determine how people treat and perceive you. And that's been true so much throughout history. It's true today and it's true in the past as well. And I'm not just talking about like those videos that you see where they're like, oh, like what type of men approach you based on your hairstyles. I'm not talking about those types of videos, because I'm gonna be honest with you. I change my hair a lot, like a lot, a lot, a lot. Like I don't have a standard hairstyle. I change my hair a lot, and the same type of men always approach me all the time. So I don't know. Those videos kind of, I don't know. I'd be looking at them kind of suspect. I don't know. Maybe it's me because I have like this weird mixed ambiguous ethnically ambiguous look going on. I don't know, maybe it's just my weird shit going on, I don't know. But me personally, I feel like I get the same type of men approaching me or not approaching me, or yeah, I don't feel like my hairstyles change that. Like in even my style, I don't feel like any of that changes. But I can say that the way I'm perceived ethnically by certain people, that is definitely impacted by my hair. And that's mostly by, I'm not even going to say a certain demographic, but just moving throughout the world, especially being in New York City where it is so many different ethnicities of people. I know for a fact the way I wear my hair has determined a lot of different things. And the thing about it is that people like to make it seem like, oh, well, if you wear this hair texture, or well, no, actually, let me not use that example because that's not a good example. But I was gonna say like, oh, like people will say like, oh, if you wear your hair straightened, people might treat you better. Like maybe that was true in 1957, but like today, I don't really feel like people are treating you better or worse based on if your hair is straightened or not. I mean, it could be something psychological to that. I don't know. But I'm more so, in my experience, when I'm talking about it as something as simple as I notice who comes and asks me directions in Spanish based on what hair texture I have. I mean, what hairstyle I have in. I'll give you a plain example. If I have my hair straightened or curly, old Spanish people always come up to me, ask me for directions, trying to chit chat with me, trying to talk to me, everything. If I have braids in my hair, if I have a wig on, they do not talk to me at all. Like clockwork. And it's not, I don't take it as a prejudice thing. I take it more of as what ethnicity you're perceiving me as thing. That's what I take it as. As what I feel like with African American people and Caribbeans, I feel like that it's not really that different. But I've noticed that so much with particularly like older Hispanic people. That's definitely a huge thing. So that's just something I've just noticed. That's what I mean. Like people will perceive you different ethnically. Even, you know, say you work at a certain job, like say you work at certain like restaurants. I remember even Cardi B talking about this, and I remember when I was desperate for money and I was thinking about picking up a second job at like a hookah lounge in well, I'm not gonna say what neighborhood, but I was, but basically, long story short, I was thinking about working at a place that was, you know, like a Dominican night lounge spot, and I already knew to myself, I'm like, oh, I can't be wearing braids and stuff up in there. I can't really be wearing braids. They're not really gonna want me to wear natural hair, and I was like, I automatically thought like the money's not worth it. First of all, I'm gonna be sexually harassed all day. Then I'm gonna have to, you know, be having to not wear the hairstyle I want because I'm gonna be worried about, you know, how it's gonna be perceived or whatever. You know what I mean? And it's not even a thing of that. Oh, I'm going to get the job and they're going to tell me, oh, you can't wear that hairstyle. But if I show up to the interview and I have my hair curly, that's what I was thinking. Or I have my hair in braids, that might impact. Even if it was say an African or Jamaican one spot, that might have been an issue as well because they want a certain look. They probably want a girl who has either their hair wash and go straightened out or maybe a wig in. You know what I mean? They don't want the afro, you know, Fulani braids look. So it, you know, that's a kind of a played out example when it comes to like nightlife and stuff. But I'm just saying, like, it's not always necessarily a horrible or really bad thing. It's just more so like, what environment do you want to be in? I don't want to be in a nightlife environment where you want me to have a, you know, 26-inch bust down full glam, you know, in leotard every single Saturday. Like, I just don't have the energy for that because I get tired of my wigs. I do my wigs for 1 week and I'm sick of it. I'm sick of the wig after a week. Now I don't know, I want waves or something. I want a bun. You know what I mean? Like, I'm that type. So I'm not gonna sign up for a job where I know I can't change my hair. I have to be restricted about my hair type. I'm not going to apply for the job, then get triggered because they told me I can't wear braids, and then get on TikTok and say, oh, they're racist, oh, they're, you know, XYZ because they told me I can't wear my braids. No, I'm simply just not gonna put myself in that position. That doesn't make it right. They shouldn't be trying to force women to look a certain way, but whatever, it is what it is. I'm just not going to put myself in that situation. That's how I feel about stuff. And yeah, it's not always necessarily because, oh, they think that it's bad hair or whatever, but they're thinking in the sense that, oh, we have a certain look in our club. So if you're wearing, you know, you have, I don't know, straight back braids or something like that, some places will act funny towards you. So it's just like, I just don't even want to deal with that. But yes, that's kind of what I was talking about. You know what I mean? Like, if it's a Caribbean club, they want a certain look. If it's a Dominican club, they want a certain look. You know, it just is what it is. So I forgot how I got to talking about that. But yeah, just like the difference in perception in different like places you're working depending on where you are. But then some jobs they don't really care. So, you know, like the job I have now, they don't really care. So it just all depends. And some people are cool with only wearing a wig or only wearing a wash and go. So that's not an issue for them. And it's like, if you are a wash and go girly and you just do the clip-ins or you do your wig, that's cool. Then go work nightlife and get your money, and that works for you. Like, I'm not gonna put myself in a position that's not gonna make me happy, and I'm not gonna put myself somewhere and then complain about it later. That's just, you know, that's just a rant. But anyway. Oh yeah, and then the whole defining people based on like yeah, how they're perceived, and that's basically what I'm talking about. Like when he was saying how it the hair texture, things like that, can change how people classify you. That's definitely a real thing also, and I've definitely noticed that in my real life as well. Because, and I've talked about this, how maybe how featurism or hair texture might play into something. I've literally seen people say that the two high yellow light skinned girls that are the same skin color as Tisha Campbell, but they'll say that one is light skinned and one is not light skinned because one got loose hair and one got 4C hair. Like, this is how dense people are. So what he's saying is absolutely right. So it's like, if other black people will have these differences amongst each other based on featurism and texturism, of course non-black people are going to have the same perception. You know what I mean? So all of those things do play into play a factor into the experiences you have. And that's why I get irritated with the whole, cut and dry, light skin, dark skin experience, because that's not really necessarily how it is all the time. If you light skin with features like Glorilla versus light skin with features that are very like keen, like Jasmine Tokes or something like that, you might have, they're literally going to be ignorant ass people who are literally going to like talk to y'all and say different things to y'all, and it might make y'all very uncomfortable. That's not your fault. It just is what it is. That's how ignorant people are. So these are real things that we have to address. You can't just say, oh, you're high yellow, so your experience is going to be XYZ. No, that's not true. And it's not fair either, because you can be light skinned all day and have 4C hair and African features, and you have a certain experience based on that, whether it's positive or negative. It doesn't always have to be negative either. But that's not fair to say that the light skinned chick who has the Jasmine Tokes features and the loose hair, they might have a positive and negative experience in different ways too. So yeah, I just feel like there's no one size fits all answer. And I feel like when people believe it's a one size fits all answer, that is why they will drag the girl, like the light skin girl who spoke about her 4C hair, because people have an expectation for what your experience is. And so yeah, that being said, that is why you will see some mixed people really maybe having a lot of anxiety towards their hair type, just based on maybe stuff that their family said or different experiences that they had and things like that. And you can go from being treated or being perceived one way, and then you start wearing braids and afro, and people start treating you completely different, people in your own culture. So that is a completely real thing. So even making that transition into wearing your hair natural, it's not just about, oh, it's a lifestyle change in terms of how I'm spending my money, how I'm spending my time, how I'm treating my hair, all of that stuff. It's also of how the world is going to perceive me, how the world is, how people in my own culture. There's a lot of different layers and steps to that. But I actually do plan to do a video surrounding, like the politics of hair typing and hairstyles when it comes to mixed and light skinned people, because I do feel like there's a lot of layers there. And even historically, I mean, think about it, like you can physically have, like, there are people who are mixed race, and they change their hair type and they don't look like they have African ancestry at all. So think about if you're living in the 1950s and you have to make some real life decisions about how you're going to survive in this society. Your hair texture literally is becoming life or death. If you're dating, you're dating the person you're not supposed to be dating, and it's about to rain and you're passing, can you imagine what type of life that is? You know what I mean? So I just can't imagine that type of constant anxiety, or like, oh, I have to stay out the sun because I'm, pretending to be Italian, and if I stay in the sun, y'all gonna see that I'm actually Nigerian. Like, you know what I mean? So it's a real deep conversation there. Like, even though I was laughing about my aunt saying that ignorant shit about my hair, but like there's real trauma there. You know what I mean? There's a real reason why a lot of mixed people, whether they be Latin or even North American, might have certain perspectives or opinion or certain experiences surrounding their hair based on race. And it's not always just, oh, I just find it better looking. There's a lot of layers with that. But anyway, let's move on. So, because he's kind of going to like repeat what I just said. So he says in the article, growing up in the Black community in the United States, I know that many Black folks would have been of the opinion that Ferreira has good hair. It is not straight, but is far less kinky than many hair textures associated with Black people. Yet in Brazil, there are some where someone like Ferreira is probably grew up having people, friends, and family included, tell him that he wasn't Black and that he shouldn't identify himself as such. He has probably faced discrimination and criticism throughout his entire life due to his hair texture. In terms of identity, this must be very confusing. On the one hand, hearing you're not Black, but then on the other hand, being consistently ridiculed for particular features that target and ridicule outside of, I think there's some typos, and ridicule outside as well as within the Black community itself. Oh, okay. Consistently ridiculed for having a particular feature that is targeted. Yeah, I think that's a typo. So I guess he means particular features that are targeted and ridiculed from within and outside the Black community. So yeah, he's kind of just doubling down on basically my little trauma dumping session and what I talked about. Hold on, let me get some water. Oh shit, I'm not still playing the lo-fi music, right? Wait, hold on. Oh, okay. I'm so paranoid about that. Cuz that's happened before. Okay. My assessment here is that Brazil allows people to identify however they wish, but the general population will still discriminate against them for having attributes associated with Blackness. As such, it becomes the choice of the individual that faces such treatment to accept or reject a Black identity when the society simultaneously undermines the acceptance of such identity while still penalizing people for possessing the physical markers associated with Blackness. And I thought that that was a really deep paragraph, so much so that inspired the title of this live. So, yeah. In terms of Meghan Markle, for the most part, if she was born in Brazil, she would probably be accepted as white. But in Great Britain, regardless of her very light skin, her non whiteness has still been a source of ridicule that she has faced from the British press. She may not have dark skin, but references to Markle as being almost straight out of Compton, possessing exotic DNA, and then having her son by Harry being compared to a chimpanzee. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. I ain't hear about that. Wow. Whoa. And I already read this article, but I don't know how I missed that part. Whoa. Whoa. And what's crazy is like, why is it always same shit, different day with these racist people? Because again, in Latin America, the whole calling Black people and people of African descent monkeys and calling their kids monkeys. Mind you, Meghan Markle's son is like basically genetically like mostly European, and they still calling him that. Like, you know what I mean? Mind you, this is coming from a nation that claims itself to be a mixed race paradise. This is why I'm sorry, as somebody who comes from a family and culture that's like that, I kind of feel like it's just so performative. And I've talked about this before, how I just feel like the promotion of mixed race culture is this underlyingness of just dishonesty that it's kind of like a veil of, yeah, it's a veil of dishonesty cloaked behind, oh, we're all together, we're one, we're a melting pot, we're proud of our three different heritages. And it's like, if you were actually genuinely proud of being indigenous, African, and European, why is there a hierarchical identification to where European is always like idolized at the top, and then the African and the indigenous is always degraded? Like, that's not a example of actual genuine love of mixedness or multiracialism, multiculturalism, whatever it is. If one group is held up as better or more beautiful or more sophisticated than all the other ones, and the other two heritages are looked at as a stain or compared to animals and all this type of stuff, no matter how physically and genetically far from said groups you get from, if the prejudices and the colorism is that deep, I don't know how to help that. Like, I don't know what to say about that. But to try to just dismiss it as, oh well, we're all just like happy and healthy to be mixed, it's like I've always kind of known that it wasn't genuine. I've always kind of known it was like kind of performative to an extent. That's kind of always how I felt, and I felt like that based on the experiences that I had, because I just kind of felt like, why are the people who actually look like they're indigenous or they're actually African or they're a mixture of the groups, but they're on the darker end, have the kinkier hair, why are these people looked at as a problem or a stain or something that needs to be gotten rid of, in terms of the Latin American context? Or it's better to have the kid that looks like only the European side of the heritage. Like, why is that a thing? But you're also simultaneously saying you're proud to be mixed. If you're proud to be mixed, why aren't the mixed people the ones being represented on Telemundo and on the ads and everything like that? Because if you look on any type of like media from any of these countries, you're only going to see a bunch of people who look more adjacently European, and maybe they got a teensy weensy tiny whiny ad mixture of a indigenous person, maybe. Like, so it's like, why are we claiming to be proud of mixedness, but you don't even show the mixed people? Like, you don't even want to show the mestizos that look more indigenous, you know what I mean? Like, so it just always came off as mad fake to me. especially like the colorism and the, the prejudice towards like my family or friends that I've seen, and even, the stuff I dealt with my hair. It just all came off always as a very fake to me. At least in the United States, people are real about what it is. White people are direct about how they feel, and I kind of feel like that it's kind of like that in the UK too. Now I can't speak on that. I'm not from there, obviously, and I do feel like maybe in Europe they might have a more cavalier way of dealing with it. More, they might be more classy about it. I don't know. As where Americans are more direct and rude about it. But I mean, honestly, I'd rather my race into my face. I'd rather you be clear about how you feel about me up front. Don't be trying to pump fake like you love mixedness. Don't be trying to, you know what I mean? Like, don't pretend like you love me and then you making low key comments about my hair and all this. Like, I don't got time for this. And I talked about this in my Isa video too. Like, this is not the first time I've went on this rant. Like, so yeah, I just found that crazy. At least in the UK, you know what to expect. You expect people in the UK or United States, you expect pure straight up white people to treat you like that or be racist. I'm not saying it's okay, but they're pretty historically consistent. But if you're coming from a culture or a country that's telling you, no, we're proud to be a mixture of all these different groups, and we're proud of our history, and we never banned miscegenation, and you can identify how you want, but then there's also this underlyingness of just hostility towards blackness or indigenous heritage, and anybody who looks farther from being European. It's just it's always weird to me. So that's also why I've always wanted people in the United States, like, don't idolize countries where there was no one drop rule, where there's all these different categories. I don't feel like I feel like the internal root of the issue is maybe a prejudice or a dislike towards African heritage and indigenous heritage. So it's more of a prejudice thing. It's not necessarily a thing of, oh, we just all need to just live simultaneously, or you live kumbaya, kind of like in the early 2000s when they would say like, oh, if we all just interracially marry, like, racism will go away. It's like, no, that's a very watered down way of looking at race relations if you're not dealing with the issues head on. And there's a woman, I forgot her name, she's Panamanian, she's a professor, she's a black woman, I forget her name, but she makes a lot of content on YouTube where she talks about Afro diasporic history, primarily in Latin America. But anyway, she was saying all of this stuff in terms of like these conversations about mixedness, and what mixedness does in societies and things like that, and the struggles that mixed families have and things like that. All of that's been talked about in Latin America, for centuries. This has been going on, and it's the same type of issues happening. So I feel like it's just kind of, you kind of have to find the sweet spot in both situations, and you kind of have to take the meat, spit out the bones, and different commentary you might hear. But yeah, I always kind of found that interesting. So it's like funny because when it comes to like having a progressive mindset towards like African heritage or blackness, I feel like the United States is more advanced. But when it comes to the conversation about like mixed raceness and identity and the complexities around how features and skin color and all that stuff intersect with your racial experience, that's kind of a newer thing in North America, as where that's been going on in some of these other countries. But yeah, it is crazy to me how some of the insults, some of the references, some of the negative opinions and comments about blackness are so consistent across the board. Like, what is up with y'all calling people monkeys? Like, now if we start calling y'all ice monkeys or Neanderthal monkeys, then you wouldn't like that, right? So let's not do that. You know what I mean? Like, come on now, because we know who was in the caves like about 1,000 years ago. So let's not even do that. But yeah, that's crazy to me that they called her kid that. I never knew that. I'm pretty sure I mentioned in a video when I was on Facebook when the whole Nicki Minaj Cardi B beef was going on, and I was in a it was some type of like stan group. You know how like female rap pages, they have like the fan pages and everything. And so the people, it was like a Spanish page, and the people who ran it, I'm pretty sure they were from were they from Argentina or Peru? I can't remember. They were from some country that I know like has a high white majority population. It was Peru or Argentina. I can't remember. Anyway, they were a pro Nicki Minaj stan page, and this was like in the heart of their beef. Anyway, long story short, they were in that Facebook group calling Cardi B and her daughter a monkey. Like, I told the story before, but yeah, I was shocked. Like, they were in there calling her all types of the M words and talking talking about her kid and everything. Like, so I don't know what be on white people's biscuits. It's like y'all being on every continent bitter as fuck towards black people. Like what is that? But then want to hop in bed and create us. I don't understand. Let me stop. But yeah, no, I found that insane. Like, cause I just wasn't expecting it. So when I saw that, I wish I had screenshotted it and saved it. Cause no, I don't think I was. No, I definitely wasn't making content at that time. I didn't start making content till like 3 or 4 years later after that. I think that was like 2018. I'm bugging. But yeah, that was really surprising to me. So when that whole, other situational love and hip hop that I won't speak of, when that whole thing happened and Shorty was trying to act ignorant, I was like, girl, you know exactly what's up. Like that's crazy that you even let that come out your mouth, because that is a very common insult towards black people in Latin America. And you don't have to be dark skinned for people to call you that. Like, you know what I mean? They just have to know that you're a person of African descent, and they will call you that. So I find that really interesting how even in countries where they are more accepting of mixedness and they have more categories for how you can identify racially, as long as you're a person of African descent, they're gonna give you certain insults. Like me personally, I've never in my life seen a mestizo called a monkey. Ever. There's certain insults I've never seen somebody call a Mexican or a Peruvian, a mestizo Colombian. Never. But it does not seem to matter the skin tone of the person of African descent. Somehow they're gonna find a way to call you and your child a monkey. It's crazy out here. But anyway, let me just finish this up. I wanted to end it like 20 minutes ago, but it's okay. I'm gonna end at 6:30. Okay, cool. So it says, perhaps the most blatant example. Let me show y'all the picture. This is wild. Like, this is crazy work right here. Like, why does this look like those like random animations that they used to have in like 98? Like, when they were trying to make animation look modern and it really just ended up looking creepy as hell. Like, this, why does it look like that? Nah. As you can see, I laugh in uncomfortable situations. But anyway, so it says perhaps the most blatant example that the British media used to make Markle know that she was seen in terms of race was a caricature of her as shown in the BBC show Tonight with Vladimir Putin. The program featured a type of puppet clearly meant to mimic Markle's appearance, again with the intent on emphasizing Markle's African ancestry, with a caricature being presented with much darker skin than Markle's actual skin tone. It was almost as if they were saying, you might think you're one of us because you're fair skinned, but let us remind you of your racial background. And that's very interesting because I heard one time, and I really wish I remember where I heard this, but I was young when I heard this. Somebody say that sometimes racist people will have even more hatred towards or prejudice towards racially ambiguous or ethnically ambiguous people like Meghan Markle, especially if they know that they have specifically African ancestry, because they feel like the person um they they feel like you are how do I describe it? Like they feel threatened by that person because that person's kind of not constricted by obviously being a person of African descent. So that racist person kind of feels like, oh, well, don't think you're, I don't know, I can't describe it. I wish I could remember what they were saying, but essentially what the person was saying was just that, like, sometimes because if a white person feels like maybe a racially ambiguous person maybe is getting too ahead of themselves, maybe, or they're socially moving up too fast, there's somewhere where they're jealous of, they have even more issue towards them, because it's kind of like that like uppity Negro trope, like, oh, you think you're on my level, or especially if I'm at a lower level, it's like a resentment and animosity, as where it's like, okay, somebody that's visibly obviously black, it's like, I know how to deal with you, I see you, and I can clock you immediately. But with somebody like Meghan Markle, you might have a racist person who feels like, oh, I already was kind of on edge, I didn't know how to feel about you, maybe because I didn't know what you were, but now that I'm finding out you're of African ancestry and you're marrying into British royalty, no, now I really have an issue with you, because who do you think you are? Who do you think you are with your beige self? You are not allowed to socially ascend and think you are doing better than me. That is the mentality that how I perceived it. And that is definitely how I perceived people's issue with Meghan Markle. And it was not only was it white women coming for her neck, it was a lot of these sassy gay men too, on the low. Like who's that British reporter, the really famous one who's been banned over here in the United States that kind of went low key like real conservative. I forgot. Piers Morgan. He was coming for her. Apparently, she like rejected him, so that makes sense. But yeah, like just the vitriol, the way that they were coming for her, I found very interesting, and it also showed me that nothing changes but the times. You know, like the white people historically have always had an animosity towards people like Meghan Markle. You know, that's where those uppity Negro tropes and things like that come from. You know, this has always been a thing. So I just thought it was interesting that even in the UK, that was still an attitude. Not surprising at all. I expected it, but I found that interesting, and it just reminded me of that same issue that's come up in history. You know, like even like a lot of those towns like Black Wall Street and stuff being burned down, a lot of that was out of like, you know, white jealousy. The white people around feeling like, oh, they're making more money, they're doing XYZ. So if you see somebody, you know, even if they're mixed race like Meghan Markle, and you're prejudiced, so you can only see, you know, that part of them in a racist prejudice way, in a racial aspect, and then you're thinking, oh, this person thinks they're doing better than me, yeah, let me get on Facebook and hate on her from, you know, behind a bot account and talk about her kid and things like that because she thinks she's doing, you know what I mean, like that's definitely the vibe I got. And it is really interesting psychologically how white people will do things to kind of like a slightly like remind a mixed person like, yeah, stay in your place, remember, you know, who you are, remember where you came from, don't think like, I don't know. It's weird. And it's like I'm not saying it in the sense that like those people that say things like, oh, well, they still view you as black. I'm not saying that at all because I do think that white people view mixed people as mixed. I definitely do that. I think they notice who's light skinned. I think they notice differences. I think they know who biracial people are. I don't think that they're coy to who the mixed people are or what's genetically going on. I think that they just perceive mixedness differently and have a different attitude than people of African descent, honestly. You know what I mean? Like, why, you know, they just have a different perspective. So it's not that they don't see your mixedness, but if, you know, they got prejudice shit going on, whatever it is, it's just who knows. But yeah, I always found that very interesting how they were doing that with Meghan Markle and like doing little things like wearing that Moorish brooch, you know, doing just like weird little like microaggressive stuff towards her, the Karen tears. It was just all very weird, but I did think that was a really important learning lesson for a lot of women of African descent. And a lot of us already know this, but you know, and have experienced that on like a macro level in like the workplace or wherever, school even, unfortunately. But yeah, I thought that it was a really interesting situation of how white people handled and treated her in that situation. And also for me, it was really telling that in the midst of all of that happening, because this was like 2021 through 2023 or so, in the midst of all of that happening, and you know, white people, you know, treating this woman and her children horrible, despite her children being predominantly mostly them. So that, what does that say about them psychologically? That you're so prejudiced that you calling somebody a racial slur based on who they great grandmama was. Like, that's ridiculous. But anyway, um dang, I lost my train of thought. Dang, I did lost my train of thought. What I was gonna say. Oh yeah, I just found it really interesting. I don't know how, yeah, this the psychological mind games they were playing with her. I was probably going off in a tangent, but yeah, let's finish up. So it says, in both cases, it is clear that Ferreira and Markle are of mixed racial ancestry. But in a European world, both in the established whiteness of the old world as well as in the tropics, they where a certification of whiteness remains the goal. The old guard of white supremacy will continue to remind mestizos, mulattoes, and persons of mixed ancestry that they aren't and never will be on the right team. That is a deep ending paragraph. So I really like how he um ended that, because that's definitely so true. But yeah, so I thought this was a really good conversation. Oh, this is what I was saying. I was saying that in the midst of all of that hate that was going on towards mixed and light skinned women in the early 2020s and everything like that, not only was it a lot of internal stuff going on in the African diaspora where a lot of people had turned on us and they were dragging the hell out of us by our edges every weekend. So not only were we being dragged by our edges from other, black women mostly, then white people were over here dragging the hell out of Meghan Markle. So I just found that to be so ironic that it was like, so no matter that the fact that this woman was being literally bullied and harassed on an international scale, people were still sitting around talking about light skin privilege, saying you could accept it more, saying if she was dark skinned, that they would have treated her better and this and that. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. I mean, I kind of don't really agree with that. I don't feel like they would have treated her worse because if she was darker. I don't really believe that. I feel like honestly part of people's issue with her was the racial stuff and her being mixed, and her being mixed does trigger white people too, just because they perceive it differently than maybe black people. Sorry, doesn't mean that they don't have their own emotional little like tizzies about it. Like I definitely feel like her being biracial really did trigger white people, and I feel like it's going back to what I was saying about my family member. I'm pretty sure that was the one that was saying that to me, that sometimes white people will accept an African or purely black, black person, but if it's a light-skinned black person or an ambiguous person, they might act funny towards them because they like, what's going on? I don't like that I can't perceive you, or I don't like that, whatever it is. Like I've actually seen it with my own eyes. Like you can't just assume that just because somebody looks a certain way that a different group is gonna like you or support you more. And who really gives a fuck? Because I feel like also a lot of it had to do with her lore too. It wasn't just her race, it was also the whole thing. She was American, she also was on a TV show. It was a lot of different light layers in British culture as to why people had an issue with her. But her also being a biracial American woman, people didn't really like that, and they felt like they could pull that race card on her and do funny stuff. And I do feel like white people also will try to run little interferences within the black community too. They know that they can say or put out little information to trigger black people against mixed people, and then they'll try to do things. They did this with Kamala Harris to try to have an issue, try to and be like, oh well, we can't really trust this person. That's what they were saying about Meghan Markle. They were claiming, oh, she's hiding her African ancestry, oh, she never claimed to be part black until she wanted to pull the race card. You know what I mean? Like they be knowing what they're doing. They're highly manipulative. They've been playing these games for hundreds of years, so they knew exactly what they were doing with Meghan Markle, and they were definitely trying to exhaust all of their options to try to sow seeds of doubt about her, and they definitely weaponized her mixed race heritage to do that. So again, just because maybe monoracial and mixed race women of African descent might experience prejudice in different ways, that doesn't mean it's like any better or worse for any group. And I think that to say, oh well, if you're XYZ skin color, you're gonna have it easier and not experience that, I feel like that's a dangerous narrative to keep up. You know what I mean? Like, do you really feel like if Prince Harry had gone and found like a royal woman from Africa who didn't have the past, and who was maybe from a British colony or something, do you really think that people would have had the same level of hostility? Now, of course, there always going to be some racist people who would have obviously had an issue with it, but Meghan Markle was not the first woman of African descent that Prince Harry had been spotted with, so it's not like people didn't know that he liked black girls. Let me but yeah, like I just feel like a lot of it, a lot of her a lot of who she was played into why people treated her the way she was. I don't feel like, oh, if she was another ethnicity or she was darker, she would have automatically been treated better or worse. I think that a lot of it had to do with class, but I feel like if he got a brown skin or dark skin woman that was in the same class as him, that was the stereotypical idea of what the British monarch wanted from his wife, I don't think it would have been as much controversy. There would have been a few racist maddies for a little bit, and I think it would have just moved on. I think that all the so-called controversy around her race and them being mad that she was in entertainment trying to make it seem like she's a lady of the night, and because she was divorced and everything like that, I think a lot of that played into it too. So I just thought it was really interesting that in the midst of all of that negative propaganda that was being put out about mixed women, and people were saying that white people always like treat us better, and that we always have the upper hand in the situation, that we get favored and we have light skin privilege and stuff like that. It's like, where was Meghan Markle's light skin privilege? Because she was working on suits for what, damn 15 damn years before she got scooped up, like, and then got dragged for what, another 5 years before she could go live off in Tyler Perry's estate and live her best life. Like, so it's like, that's not to say, of course, like, it's not to say colorism isn't a thing, but let's not pretend like we don't live in a society, like he said, that feels a certain way. But anyway, get in the comment section. Thanks for the support for everybody who joined me live. Actually, let me check out the comments first before I close it. Oh dang, y'all have a lot. Y'all put a lot of comments. Oh shoot. Let me scroll up. Hold on. Let me drink some water first. I'm literally about to pass out. Okay. Where did I leave off? Oh, I'm from the UK. Bright activist. Yep, you know the vibe, scream. What's my favorite Latin country to visit? Oh, so far I've only been to like 3 or 4 countries, and Mexico twice. So, and I was a kid at that time. The other 2 times I was an adult. So I really can't answer that so far, honestly. But from the experiences I did have, Mexico, but only because of what I did that was fun. But it's not because of the country. It was because of what I did. My would be Cuba. Oh, cool. Okay. Very cool. Cuba, and I think that's Ecuador. Yeah, Ecuador. I'd be interested in going to Ecuador. I heard Ecuadorian food is good. Brazil do the one skin tone rule. They can be 20 black and very dark and make them Afro Latinos. LMFAO, they need to get the fuck out of here. They got one feature rule. LMFAO. No, that's y'all funny. Y'all funny. But actually, this the guy Marques Travae, who runs the blog, he has made videos where he was talking about how, like, the way their racial classification is, and I'm pretty sure it's like this in Cuba and the DR too, but I'm not exactly sure. But basically, like, you write down. No, I feel like I think I heard that in DR they tell you what you're gonna put, but I think in Cuba you can choose. But yeah, so basically in Brazil, you tell them how you identify, and they put it down for you. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, you can be monoracially black, but I guess you can say you're pardo or whatever. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. But again, I'm not there, so I'm just speaking based on what I heard from him, and I know how it works in other countries. So yeah. And you said Glorilla versus Ice Spice, hair and features. Yeah, exactly. No, that's absolutely true. I mean, and also there's an ethnicity factor as well, because Ice Spice is not only, she's also African American, but she's Afro Latina also. And I know as people were kind of putting her in the only like Latina box, as where Glorilla is African American. So I think that also plays a role in things also. But it's interesting because I feel like they both have African features though, and we never really seen Glorilla's hair, so I don't know. But but yeah, I do think the ethnicity difference also plays a difference in perception too. I just did a video about that, I'm pretty sure. I just got a haircut. Oh, nice. You looking sharp, Irby. But people have always said I had soft and neat hair, whatever that means. Soft and neat. I can see the soft hair things. I do have some family members that I feel like their hair is soft. Like, I feel like my hair is soft too, but I get what you mean. I've definitely heard that before also. I've definitely heard that before. And I've heard old people talk about keeping your hair neat. That's funny. I think that is like an old, like, black Southern term, like keep your hair neat or whatever. It says, oh, then British people, racist. Oh yeah, no, definitely. They the original racists. Like, they imported their prejudice over here. Like, they're literally the reason we're in all of this mess today. Literally. If they had just treated their own people a little better, maybe America would have been off to a happier start. Maybe. I don't know. Irby says it's gonna be biased in multiracial, multicultural societies. It all depends on who's in power and puts in laws. White Latinos, they have Ricky Martin, Sofia Vergara, Mark Anthony, and these telenovelas. Right, exactly. What the hell they called Prince Archie? Yeah, no, exactly. No, absolutely. And if you think about it, I mean, I don't know. Of course, I don't know those people's like genetics, but a lot of those people descend from the people who were actually like the Spanish people here already, and they already had a little bit of money. So it is an economic and racial element to things. And I find that to be actually very fascinating because it's like that in the United States, but to an extent, because there's less, how do I say this? Okay. I don't know. In the United States, I feel like it's more like, I don't know. It wasn't, I feel like race and class are not as deeply intertwined and are deeply as associated in the same way. Cause like I've even heard in some countries, if you have enough money, people will call you a different race. Like I've heard, like if okay, say you're the same race as, or the same like phenotype as somebody who is poor and from the slums or something like that, they will literally like call you a different race in some countries. I've heard. But that's only like in Latin America. That's not a thing in the United States. You can be rich all day, nobody cares, you know. So I always found that very interesting. Also, yeah, I'm not sure how it is for poor people though. Like if you're white and poor, I don't know if there's a difference in perception, but definitely there's a huge economic element to colorism in Latin America too. And yeah, those people like Sofia Vergara, Ricky Martin, yeah, I don't know about Sofia Vergara specifically, I'll say that, but at least I'll speak for Cuba. I know like in Cuba, a lot of those people, and that's why they come to the United States and they act a certain way too, because they come from the ruling class that already have money, and that was the original colonizers. So they're white because they, were rich up in their palace. They wasn't, or their house, whatever. They wasn't, mixing with the common person. Or they're recent European immigrants that came over here, in like the 20s or something, kind of like, in New York City or something. So, they weren't there during slavery and stuff. So that's why they're white today. So it's kind of interesting in that regard. Um, but yeah. So basically they trying to humble your ass for being light skinned. Yeah, exactly. Essentially. They're like, don't come up here with all that light skin confident energy. Don't be thinking, nope. They're like, sit down. No, you're not gonna be making me feel some type of way with my tan, which that I gotta pay for. That's exactly what they're saying. Sound just like a darker skin. Scream says, oh, and hey, Yahamina. Hey, how are you, girl? Thanks for supporting. Thanks for being here. And Scream says, sounds just like a darker skinned person saying, yo ass think you better because you light skin. No, it really is. The psychology, it really is. Sometimes I try to avoid saying this, but sometimes when it comes to the way mixed and light skinned people are treated, I do feel like sometimes light skin and white and darker skinned black people do say stuff in the two sides of the same coin. Like, I don't like to say that, but that is true. Like, they will use the same reverse psychology tactics on mixed and light skinned people. I have noticed that. And even the same type of like, oh, embracing you 1 minute and then rejecting you another minute, oh, making little side comments. Like I've experienced that from white people and darker skinned black people also. You little mango. I'm dead. Mango skin. That's kind of cute though. I like mango skin. I mean, it could be derogatory, but I think it's cute. Honey. Irby says, Megan say before Archie was born, the royal family was having questions about how Archie's skin tone was going to be. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. And I can totally believe that. Like, I could totally believe that. Absolutely. I mean, honestly, there are sometimes when a person who has like a biracial parent, they do come out still with like quote unquote darker skin. You know what white people would consider darker skin. Y'all know what I mean. Like, think about Tandy Wade Newton's daughter. Like, I actually did a video on her. She's technically, genetically, she's the same as Archie. But if you look at her next to Archie looks like a straight up white boy, or even Adonis, Drake's son. They look like, well, Adonis looks kind of spicy white to me, honestly. Like, if you squint, you can see it. But but anyway, but yeah, Archie compared to like Tandy Wade Newton's daughter. Tandy Wade Newton's daughter, to me, she looks first generation biracial. So like, she could never really move around the world and claim to be white. But Archie could claim to be white could claim white. You know what I mean? So there are hit or miss situations, but it just shows how deep the anti-blackness and prejudice within the royal family is, to the fact that they were already pressed about that. Like, and I do believe that that was part of it also. That, and I want to make that clear when it comes to what I was saying about, like, if Meghan Markle was like monoracial, would they have treated her different? You know what I mean? Like, who knows? I feel like they still would have treated her, given her an issue, but I do think that the class thing plays a part in it. But I do want to be clear about that. So it says, of course, white people like to pit mixed people against black people. That's why they believe in the Willie Lynch legend. Yeah, and only for their only for situations I've noticed. Like, most of the time I feel like they don't, I'm not gonna say they don't care that much, but at least in modern day, I think that they like to, they probably sit back and be watching the light skin dark skin content, or be watching the mud slinging on TikTok and stuff. But I think they watch now for entertainment, but I think politically they will use it to their benefit if they feel like there's a financial gain or something. But I don't think it's as critical as it was like during slavery. But I think that they will, do that in certain situations. For example, y'all know in New York we had a recent election. I guess the dude that they just put in office, he lived in like Zimbabwe or something for a few years. But anyway, apparently they were trying to say, they were trying to like get an emotional reaction out of black people and say, oh, he's trying to claim to be black or African American so he could get some type of I don't know, some type of scholarship or something like that. But it was like the New York Times putting that information out, and apparently they were really trying to push that story, like trying to make it seem like that dude was trying to like pass to be black or something. I don't know the details of that situation, so I'm not going to go too much into it. But I found, when my mom told me that, I found that hilarious, because I'm like, yeah, they know exactly what to do. It doesn't always work, but they know what they can try to do to get little like emotional reactions out of black people. Like, they really definitely have people of color clock so hard, because they really politically know what to say to get different thing, to try to like evoke certain emotional reactions. So that's one thing I will say about white people. They're very observant, I will say that. They're very handy with their manipulation also, so I gotta give it up to them. I'll have to rewatch this late. Yeah, sorry. I mean, it's what is it, 1 hour and about probably like 40 minutes at this point. Yeah, maybe you can watch it while you're cleaning up or something, girl, doing laundry. Sorry it's so long. Thanks again for being here when you were, though. So it says, did you see that did you see that damn ad of a white person calling themselves golden because they tan? I was like, don't, they took our turn. I'm done. I mean, shoot, nothing changes with the times, honestly. No, that is too funny. I did hear vaguely something about that. I think it was like a Dunkin' Donuts ad, and I don't even know who the celebrity dude is, but I think I did hear something about that. I mostly just thought it was funny, because again, it's kind of like what I was just saying. Like, I do feel like they know how to get like a response out of people, not just black people, but people in general. Even with the Sydney Sweeney thing, like, me personally, I thought it was more so stupid. I wouldn't have immediately made the association with like eugenics and everything. But if white people want to argue with each other about that and go off on each other about that, who am I to get in the middle of that? They know each other's psychology more than me. So I didn't care that much about the ad, but they took it very seriously. So I thought it was an interesting conversation. But yeah, I thought that they were trying to be. I definitely thought they were trying to be provocative, though, and trying to get a response out of people. They definitely knew what they were doing, but it just, I didn't care that much. But I think that they're trying to do the exact same thing with the other ad of the dude. It just doesn't hit the same way, though, because he's like, what, a brunette, like Italian looking dude. Like, it doesn't have the same historical connotations. The reason why the Sydney Sweeney ad triggered people the way it did was because of the historical connotations of what the caption was. So it's funny that they're trying to play coy, like, oh, we just put it together, we didn't know. Y'all knew exactly what y'all were doing. And then y'all sent some Colorism ink bots to the white girl section of TikTok, and got everybody triggered, and y'all did what y'all did, and now people are talking about y'all American Eagle jeans that nobody was checking for since 2016. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I've clocked their tea. But yeah, in my opinion, that's just, they're using the same tactics Colorism Inc. uses, to be honest. But yeah, so even though I didn't care that much about the Sydney Sweeney ad, I think that I like when white people call shit out for what it is from each other. I think that's necessary, because I do think that it is telling that they're um leaning into that. Because I remember in the early 2000s, when I don't remember if it was American Eagle or it was one of those ad companies, and there was like this huge controversy. People were saying that they don't hire fat people or black people and stuff. Like, so when this whole situation happened, I was like, why is anybody surprised? Like, y'all just must have forgot how all these brands used to move in the early 2000s. Like, they never wanted y'all wearing their clothes, sweetie. Like, like it was never you, boo. Like, so I don't know, but funny. Maybe I'll do like a topics live. If y'all like comment some topics, maybe like on my post that y'all want me to talk about, I'll start like putting together like maybe hot topics live so we can just talk about like random stuff. Because before I used to go live at like like 1 o'clock in the morning and like nobody would be in the chat. But now I see like if I do my live like middle of the day, Sunday, people will be here. Y'all can catch it, comment, everything like that. Unfortunately, I didn't realize I don't have the StreamYard membership to be able to show y'all's comments on the screen for some reason. I was trying to, but I guess you got to pay for that. They just want to get you with everything. But yeah, so I'm in the stream here, so it's not like crazy long, even though it already is. But again, thanks you guys for the support. Hopefully I'll catch you on the next one. Enjoy the rest of y'all's evening, morning, whatever it is for you. Thanks for all the support. Peace.